Welcome to Ranger Stories. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am the creator of Jump Rangers, and this is the show where I read things that I'm writing in the Jump Rangers universe and probably edit and discuss them for your viewing pleasure. Today we're reading Jump Rangers, a Game of Conquest, Chapter 9. If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of Ranger Stories, you can find these episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/jumprangers. Let's begin. You ever wake up to find something small and furry sitting on your chest and waiting for you to notice it? When I woke up to find the Nomad, I would come to know as Scrap, sitting on my blanket staring right at my face, I didn't scream. When I was little, my brother had a pet rat. Things like this have happened to me before, but you'd better believe it's a different experience when you know the thing that's waiting for you has a name and a job and probably knows what they want to be when they grow up. Strange as this was, I kept my bloop. In the barracks of the Ranger's Roost, every Ranger team gets their own room. Each room has 2 small walls with 6 bunks built right into the walls. The foot of those beds is a cubby with a table. At the head, there's a row of lockers and a bulkhead with a heavy sealed door. When you're on a planet with a hostile atmosphere or one with very low atmosphere like Planet Link, they build rooms like these to be sealed up in case of emergency. If you ever do wake up at the Ranger's Roost to find a missling sitting on your face or chest, don't sit up too fast. Bunks in the colonies aren't really tall enough for sitting up. You'll bonk your head against the steel ceiling of your berth, and that's no way to start a conversation. Sarge, I'm sleeping. There's a missling sitting on my chest and looking at me. Uh-huh. It's wearing a cloak and an environmental mask, some armor. It's got a spear with glowing parts. It looks like it does something super. Dropping down from the bunk above me, because the Sarge always wants the top bunk, he peers into my berth and sees the tiny alien. Grabbing my data deck, he sets it on the table in our cubby. Typing out a message and playing the translation, the Sarge waves the Nomad over to the table. In a burst of light and sound, not all that different from the sound of a vacuum sealing, the Nomad vanishes from my bed and reappears instantly on the tabletop. Considering the Sarge, the Nomad squeaks a reply for the translator. Pulling myself out of my berth, I glance over at the both of them. Wrench, could you please get us some grilled cheese and coffee? Some people are too proud for taking care of others, but not me. Heading out for grilled cheese and coffee, I leave the Sarge to speak, or squeak, if you will, with the Nomad. Maybe he'll have better luck than I did. The Sarge always has been a people person. Finding Uncle Slappy in the cafeteria, I ask for snacks and coffee. Happy to oblige, he gets behind the grill. I never told him who I was feeding back in our room, and he never asked. Much as they can make it easy to forget sometimes, there are grown-ups who get that there are some things grown-ups do not need to know. When I returned, the Sarge was already on a first-name basis with Scrap. When Scrap asked the Sarge what the story was with Jump Rangers as a team or a force or whatever it is we are, the Sarge took it upon himself to explain the code. Much as we tell ourselves that the code makes us special, the stewards of humanity's future, the code was something that Scrap related to. In many ways, Scrap acted less like a grown-up and more like a Jump Ranger. I'm going to retype this because I think it needs to be a little bit beefier, that sentence. I found there were many ways in which Scrap acted less like a grown-up and more like a Jump Ranger. Over the time I knew him, over the years, I found there were many ways in which Scrap acted less like a grown-up and more like a Jump Ranger. Something else the Sarge had learned while I was making sandwiches with Uncle Slappy is that Scrap was 195 years old when we met them in the barracks of the Ranger's Roost. You'd think a mouse as old as Scrap would be more grown up than the grownest grown up we ever knew. And Scrap was old for a misling in much the same way that Uncle Slappy is old for a human. But Scrap wasn't old in the way we think of when we think of a mouse that's been alive for 200 years. Basically, Scrap was a misling we could talk to. Sitting around the table in the cozy little cubby of our barracks at the Ranger's Roost, we watched the misling munch at a grilled cheese sandwich while we explained the details of our problem. Like the mislings, we have a home world that's quickly getting chewed to pieces and choked to death by saurian mining and industry and whatnot. Like the mislings, we don't have the technology or the numbers for fighting back. Just like the mislings, there are people in our civilization who have decided to fight things out anyway. Hearing me out, the nomad stared gravely at the thick metal surface of the table. If the history of the mislings had sounded familiar to me, back when it was explained to us by most glorious squeak of the lizard ship Vitriol, then our story seemed extremely familiar to Scrap, patiently letting us finish our tale, our story, our tale, the telling of it. See, I like it to have a little bit of a storybook feel, even though it's kind of a science fiction book. And I don't know if that's kiddie enough, because this is, Wrench's voice that we're speaking in. But I think Wrench is kind of, Wrench is in the technocore, but Wrench is kind of a little bit of a poet, I think. Much as she wouldn't admit it. Hearing me out, the nomad stared gravely at the thick metal surface of the table. The history of the mislings had sounded familiar to me back when it was explained to us by most glorious squeak of the lizard ship Vitriol. Then our story seemed extremely familiar to Scrap, patiently letting us finish the telling of it. Scrap listened as we asked them about whether they thought the spores could save planet Earth. Asked them about whether. There. Patiently letting us finish the telling of it, Scrap listened as we asked them about whether. Scrap let us ask them. Scrap let us ask them about whether the spores could save planet Earth. Oh, I tapped that. Scrap let us ask them whether the spores could save planet Earth. Thinking long and hard, Scrap took their time before speaking into my translator. Understand that you are asking a very big question, and that bringing the spore to your homeworld is something that would have very big consequences. Consider that hundreds of generations of human beings will live and die before the spore have finished cleansing your world. Consider that much of the life on your homeworld has already been destroyed, and that saving what remains may not seem worthwhile when the age of mist has passed for Earth. Consider, too, that the spore bugs are dangerous. Even if you ask for permission to bring the spore to Earth, and even if that permission is given, the spore are never something you control. Consider that the saurians have gotten very good at finding a spore infestation, and they are quick to exterminate them when they do. Overwhelming the saurian horde with spore is not as easy as it was when we brought the spore to Mist. Consider all of these things, and then consider the wishes of your people. While the Jump Rangers have done great things for Earthlings, your people have not given you the authority to decide their future. If you decide their future anyway, they will see you as their enemy. None of that even came close to answering my question. You know that, right? Looking me in the eye, Scrap declines to respond. Does that mean that they do think the spore bugs can help us and that they don't want to tell me so? Do they think it's too big a sacrifice for a little kid to make? Or are they trying to talk me out of it because they think it's hopeless? Scrap, you said that I needed permission to bring the spore to Earth. Yes, I did. Whose permission do we need? That is not my story to tell. Did the nomads have permission when they brought the spore to Mist? Yes, we did. Sitting there, I thought about what Scrap was really telling me. For one thing, they were telling me that the nomads had respect for the spore bugs. If they'd thought of the spore bugs as big dumb bugs, they wouldn't have needed to ask anyone whether it's okay to just capture them and use them. For another thing, They were telling me that the nomads weren't alone in the galaxy. Whoever it was that gave them permission, whoever it was that gave them permission to use the spore, they went to that person for help. When they asked for it, help was given. Here's a better question. How did the nomads find out about the spore bugs to start? Scrap smiled. That is also not my story to tell. Well, is there any way we can meet the people who can tell us these things? Hearing my question, Scrap released a sigh of frustration. I do not know. Listen, Scrap. Back on the mothership Vitriol, Most Glorious and Exceptional Squeak told us that the Mistlings wanted nothing to do with the Nomads. We know that whatever you did, it got you in a lot of trouble. From what the Sarge and I can tell, it was still the right thing to do. Maybe our people aren't so different. Maybe the Sarge and I are going to get in a whole lot of trouble too if we bring the spore to planet Earth. Maybe we'll be exiled. Maybe worse. Taking a moment, I consider the fact that Scrap was actually alive when the Jump Rangers were founded. Have you been watching the Jump Rangers a long time? Do you know how we started? I have not, and I do not. So the Rangers were started by a pair of kids who called themselves Pick and Rookie about 150 years ago. Too many things were wrong, on a colony called New Earth, and this was the first place we settled after the Saurians invaded. People had been afraid and tired for so long that they were actually starting to forget what it felt like to have hope. No matter where we hid, the exterminators would find us and chase us out of our homes. People had no way of finding out what happened to all the colonists who'd been taken to other planets, to all the refugees who had been taken to other planets when they escaped Earth on Saurian motherships. Never in the history of our world has everybody felt so alone as we did back then. As they did back then. See, this is an interesting question. And I think it would be they, because Wrench is a little kid and they don't necessarily connect themselves to history in the same way as a grown-up would. Nobody wanted to let two kids start solving the problems that grown-ups were supposed to be solving, but Pick and Rookie were tired of sitting around and waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Back then, nobody thought of a kid as a person you could trust. When Pick and Rookie started sneaking aboard the motherships that were coming and going from New Earth, looking for other people and other colonies, they got in the worst kind of trouble for it. Who was going to let a pair of kids decide what our future looked like out here in the colonies? Nobody. But then again, who else was making those decisions? Who else was even trying? Who else was I like that? Who else was even trying? The first colony that Pick and Rookie found. Excuse me. The first colony that Pick and Rookie found was the colony on Soros. Just the news that other people were alive out there and that people were making lives for themselves in the galaxy. That news gave people hope. Nobody wanted to let Pick and Rookie change how things work, but it made a difference in people's lives that they did. Not caring about whether we get in trouble is the only way we've come this far. When the Saurians came to planet Earth, they exterminated us. Our only hope of surviving was to leave. Just the fact that there are any humans left at all, that tells you what we're capable of. Right now, there are no humans left on Earth. If the spore take over our world, who does it hurt? All we'd be doing is giving the Saurians the same choice that they gave us. Leave or die. And we'd be saving our homeworld. Hopefully. Which reminds me, what made you so sure that the spore were good for your homeworld? Once they've cleaned things up, what makes you so sure they'll give it back? Taking a long breath, Scrap's posture deflated right there in front of us. That also is not my story to tell. Taking a deep breath of my own, I consider what Scrap is really saying here. What Scrap is really saying to me. They're not saying I can't have the information I'm asking for. All they're saying is that I need to go get that information from someone else. What do we need to do How many people? How do we meet? What do we need to do? How do we meet the people who can tell us this story? I think we just delete. I think it's just how do we meet the people who can tell us this story? Surprised at my question, Scrap looks me in the eye. For one thing, we must learn to trust each other. Following the conversation back and forth until now, the Sarge jumps in. I'll teach you. What's that, Sergeant Goat? What are we teaching? We can't make you a jump ranger. Nobody over the age of 18 is allowed to be a jump ranger. But you're small, you're smart, you can handle yourself. I can teach you everything you know to be a jump ranger. That way, you'll know what a jump ranger is. Then you'll know if you can trust us or not. Listening, Scrap allows themselves a smile. This is good. I can teach you the path of the nomad. Nomads are the guardians of the missing people, and I do not believe the nomad elders would make you members of our order, but they might let you train and to face the trials. Trials? What trials? If you can pass the trials, then I know you have the strength, the courage, the wisdom, and the balance to learn our history and to seek help for your homeworld from the spore. Looking giddy, the Sarge rubs his hands together. Are you going to teach us how to teleport? First, you will teach me what it means to be a jump ranger. Then I will decide whether it is right to set you on the path. In that moment, sitting at the table in the back of our rusty barracks at the Ranger's Roost, all three of us could feel the energy or fate or destiny or whatever it was that was bringing us together. Between the three of us, something big was happening. Maybe we'd be in trouble for saying this out loud, but we knew that we were making history. That's not quite right. I'm just going to make that smaller. In that moment, sitting at the table in the back of our rusty barracks at the Ranger's Roost, all three of us could feel the energy or fate or destiny or whatever it was that was bringing us together. In that moment, we knew that we were making history. I like it. I like this. I like this book. I think it's coming along well. Um, so things that I've promised on this stream have come to pass. On Thursdays at 5 p.m., including this Thursday, we have a stream called The Mission Files, which is when I sit down and I write a Jump Rangers adventure. I didn't finish last week's. It's called the Trek Rule, which is a reference to the part of the Jump Rangers code that says if you don't have anything better to do, you need to go exploring and find new places for people to live. I've started building a mission. I didn't finish. I had a commitment last Thursday, so we're going to finish that up. There's going to be some random generation tables in that mission file, so that's always fun. So join me for that, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then 1:30 p.m. Saturday, we have Metagame, which is a Jump Rangers actual play stream with myself and people who are actually working on the game. It's Ippy Looney, who is my wife and also a voice actor, and Federico Estevo. Estivo. Dang it. Estivo. Estivo. I think that's it. Federico Estivo, which is he's our art director. Federico's our art director. He's the person who's designing the look of Jump Rangers. And it was a very chill session. Federico's a lot of fun to play with. I'm hoping he's going to get a little more confrontational about design issues, because that's kind of why I'm running the stream. And at some point, we're going to bring in other people working on the game. Dan Haggerty is our composer, and he plays a ton of tabletop role-playing games. He's just very busy, so at some point, we'll get him roped in. Lucinda Bruce, who is our producer, has never played a role-playing game, but we'll get her in at some point. She's in Australia. Also very busy. But it's going to be a fun stream. It's called Metagame because, the idea is that we sort of bring the game development process into the gameplay. And I don't know, I think it's going to be fun. It's also an opportunity to work through some of the content that I've developed for Jump Rangers over the years, and I think that'll be good too. So that's happening. I've been streaming more or less every weekday except Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific. I've been streaming Star Citizen on my personal Tecker10 channel, twitch.tv/Checker10 if you want to join me. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff in the works. It's an exciting, crazy time. The writer's strike has been very hard. But I'll speak more on that when I have more information. There may be some big changes coming up in my life with Ibby Looney. We'll see how that shakes down. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me for Ranger Stories. Be back next week, Tuesday at 5 p.m. There's plenty of chapters we haven't covered yet in the data deck files. Any subscriber to the Patreon at patreon.com/JumpRangers has access to all the additional content. Free, you get the tabletop role-playing core book, the text of it. You get the first 10 chapters of the book we're reading here, including this one, and a whole bunch of other odds and ends. But basically, all the expansion material comes with a $5 a month subscription. There's 5 supplements. There's like full-bodied supplements to the Jump Rangers tabletop role-playing game, and including the chapters of this book, there's more than 70 small kind of micro supplement data deck files as well. So please check it out. There's a lot there. If you're in any way interested in Jump Rangers, you're getting a lot for $5 a month, and it's going to become even more impressive as time goes on. So consider signing up. We need the support. Help me pay Federico to do art, please. And that's it. That's the show. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Go high and go far, Rangers. Take care.